South Africa's economy has been ranked as one of the world's most miserable, with soaring public debt and a quarter of the workforce unemployed.
There has been recognition of the malaise of corruption in the ANC.
This is on COVID-19 related tender irregularities and corruption allegations against senior members of the governing party.
Secretary General of the African National Congress, Ace Magashule, is the highest ranking member of the governing party to be charged with fraud and corruption. The charges are linked to a 5-year-old project in the Free State province. The provincial government paid about $15 million to a company to remove asbestos sheeting from the roofs of homes here. Instead, the money was stolen, some of it allegedly by Magashule, who was running the provincial government at the time.
Top 5 political scandals in South Africa. One word that prevails when you read on politics in South Africa is the word corruption. Corruption is deeply rooted in South Africa's political system, and it is an undeniable cause of many problems that include crime, unemployment and poverty. Corruption has taken monies meant for public services and filled up the pockets of the few politically connected individuals and their families. Many initiatives to curb corruption have been tried and have often failed, and political scandals remain the thing that people remember instead. Political scandals ranging from leaders with false qualifications, fraud, maladministration and bribery. These are the top political scandals to rock South Africa.
Number 5.
The Travelgate scandal. 40 South African members of parliament were charged for using travel vouchers worth over 30 million rands to pay for lavish trips for themselves and their relatives. Most of the accused parliamentarians were from the ruling party, the African National Congress, but others were from other parties. The scandal was exposed by Sunday Times newspaper and it became the biggest scandal after the fall of the apartheid government. Members of parliament laid huge claims for their travel allowances, and even gave their relatives free air tickets for luxurious free holidays. The South African National Prosecuting Authority questioned 135 members of the National Assembly, and 14 were convicted after pleading guilty to theft and fraud and charges stemming from abuse of parliamentary travel vouchers. 5 travel agency employees and bosses were also convicted, and the then General Secretary of the African National Congress Women's League Bader Billy Dlamini were sentenced by Cape Judge President John Loth to fines ranging from 25 to 120,000, with alternatives of 3 to 5 years in prison. All were given additional suspended 5-year sentences. Amongst those who pleaded guilty were Randy Pitters, Deleleni Duma, Bruce Kanmeyer, Alice Sitkoyo, Luel Medicinian and Tsitsi Lau. Others who were charged with fraudulent mileage claims included Bader Billy Dlamini, Garth Ngomazulu, Patrick Molloy, Bengaliz Solo, Beauty Dlulane, Sophia Main, Robert Ngomla and Barbara Thompson.
With all due respect, Chair, and to you, Minister, you know that you entered a plea bargain in 2006 about the Travelgate, publicly admitted to defrauding Parliament. Why should we trust your word about the 1st of April? And that is the validity of the question of conscience.
You want me to talk about your court and things that you have done?
Please,
no problem.
Let's not.
No, don't.
I've never been in a court
please,
though.
No. Let's not.
In my life, by the way.
Please.
We are increasingly doubting in the word of the minister.
No, please, comrade, hang on.
The 1st of April, will it happen or not? Why should we trust her?
Please,
okay.
Defrauded the state with amounts ranging from 150,000 to 289,000 rands. They were asked to repay the monies in installments, and some paid their last installment in 2010. Bader Billy Dlamini, who claimed to be aware that her vouchers could be used for air travel only, used the vouchers to pay for hotel accommodations, car rentals and other benefits. She went on to become famous for her statement, "Everyone has mini skeletons in their closets." Air tickets were booked, issued and then cancelled on the same day, but a copy was made prior to the voiding of tickets, and a claim was laid as if the flights were still valid. Several of the accused faced civil claims from the liquidators of Bathong Travel Agency, which is one of the firms implicated in the voucher scam.
The prosecuting authority has confirmed today it's going to prosecute the leader of the ANC Women's League, Bader Billy Dlamini, for allegedly lying under oath while she was the Minister of Social Development. The Constitutional Court found that she had neglected her duties during the social grants payment scandal. A separate inquiry then chaired by Judge Bernard Ngwepe found that she had lied about her role in the scandal. She lied under oath.
Number 4.
Arms deal scandal. One of the biggest political scandals to hit South Africa is the arms deal scandal, where millions of rands from the public purse were misused through bribes and irregularities. The arms deal was the first scandal to lay foundation to skepticism on government deals that came after it. The African National Congress lost the people's trust after this huge scandal. The corruption and excessive spending of public funds on arms that the country did not need or afford had many citizens asking themselves whether the spending was justifiable for a country that was not at a threat of being involved in a war or border dispute. All the wasteful expenditure took place at a time when the country was ravaged by massive unemployment, poverty and the AIDS epidemic, while the then president of the country, Thabo Mbeki, was in denial of scientific facts that HIV indeed caused AIDS. Also reports by the health minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, announcing that the country could not afford life-saving drugs. Instead of caring about the health of its citizens, the South African government went on to spend billions of rands to purchase expensive high-tech military equipment which included submarines, fighter jets, helicopters and warships. The government defended its sale of arms by claiming that the companies that sell these arms will be using South African steel and other local components and, therefore, creating jobs and boosting the economy.
The controversy over the infamous South African arms deal stretches back nearly 20 years. The deal was to buy fighter aircraft, helicopters, submarines and naval corvettes for the armed forces. In November 1998, Cabinet approves the arms deal, which carries a price tag of 30 billion rand. On that day, Jacob Zuma, Shabir Sheikh and arms dealer Thomson CSF meet. September 1999, Patricia de Lille presents Parliament with a dossier compiled by so-called concerned ANC MPs, which contains allegations of extensive corruption in the arms deal. Negotiations and investigations begin. March 2000, Zuma, Sheikh and Alan Tithard of Tint allegedly meet to discuss paying Zuma R500,000 rand a year in return for protection against a probe into Thomson. June 2003. In the UK, it is revealed that BAE, British Aerospace, had paid commissions to agents to help secure the deal. October 2004, Shabir Sheikh's trial begins. June 2005, Judge Hilary Squires finds Sheikh guilty. He is jailed for 15 years and his lawyers appeal the sentence. Same month, Zuma is charged with having had a generally corrupt relationship with Sheikh. In August, his house is raided by the Scorpions. September 2006, Zuma's corruption case is struck from the roll. September 2008, the High Court rules corruption charges against Zuma are invalid. April 2009, the acting head of prosecution, Mokotedi Moshe, withdraws charges against Zuma. Then, on March the 16th, 2018, nearly a decade later, this happened.
I would thus like to take the opportunity today to inform the nation of my decision in relation to representations I received from former President Zuma on 31 January 2018 in terms of the provisions of Section 179, subsection 2 of the Constitution to reconsider the decision to indict him on 16 charges of an 18-charge indictment.
The arms deal corruption trial of former President Jacob Zuma and French arms dealer Thales. The corruption case has already been postponed twice because of former President Jacob Zuma's ill health. Zuma and Thales are facing charges of corruption, racketeering and money laundering in connection with the 1999 arms deal. It remains unclear whether the former president, who was released on medical parole earlier this month, will be present in court.
Between 1996 and 1999, South Africa bought weapons worth over 30 billion rands. Patricia de Lille, who was the leader of the Pan-African Congress at the time, was the whistleblower, and after many delays in the investigation, the National Prosecuting Authority looked into the matter from the year 2000. Corruption, fraud and money laundering charges were brought forward against former President Jacob Zuma after he was allegedly pocketing money for providing protection to the bidders, Thales, a French arms company. His case began in 2005, and his financial advisor Shabir Sheikh was convicted. Sheikh was arrested for bribing Zuma and for also asking Thales an annual bribe of 500,000 rands. The scandal prompted the then President Thabo Mbeki to fire his deputy president Jacob Zuma, who defeated him 2 years later at the Polokwane Conference for the leadership of the African National Congress. In 2009, all charges against Zuma were dropped after his lawyers submitted a representation when they submitted the infamous spy tapes, which sought to prove that there was political manipulation of the case. In 2018, after being ousted as the president, Jacob Zuma was charged again, and he asked the charges to be dropped permanently, after arguing that the case has been tainted by political interference. His bid failed and the case was allowed to continue.
You know Patricia Delil, minister, now. She appeared before the Security Commission to present what is called the Delil dossier. And then when she's cross-examined, she says, I know nothing about any of the things said in this dossier. It didn't come from me. I was given these things by ANC MPs. I'm really just conveying this thing. I cannot say this thing is right or wrong or whatever. She didn't bring any information, she says herself. I don't know. You please investigate. So the point I'm making, Tsepiso, is that let's wait for to see what the court says. But we've been arguing this thing for decades. People who say there was grand corruption, this, not and the other, let them produce this evidence of this grand corruption. But nobody produces any evidence of any kind. If they did, even now, with this application that was made quite correctly by Corruption Watch and Right to Know, it's good for them to go to court. I support that. But again, there was no new evidence presented.
The arms deal was plagued by corruption and a commission was established in 2011, chaired by Judge Sariti, who was a judge of the Supreme Court, and the commission became known as the Sariti Commission. The Cape businessman, Richard Young, his company lost the tender for the South African Navy corvettes, showed their initial report had been tampered, and factual bases had been removed or changed. British and German investigators suspected that bribes of over R1 billion were paid to facilitate the deal. Swedish company Saab also helped build an industrial school by donating 30 million rands. It has been alleged that this 30 million rand was in fact a bribe for South African politicians. African National Congress Chief Whip at the time, Tony Njeni, was found guilty of fraud after receiving a large discount on the purchase of a luxury Mercedes-Benz ML500 from one of the firms bidding for a contract. He was sentenced to 4 years but only served 5 months of his sentence. Jacob Zuma's financial advisor Shaber Sheikh was sentenced to 15 years in 2005 for soliciting bribes for President Zuma from Vint, the local subsidiary of the French arms company Thales, but he was released on a medical parole in 2009 after serving 2 years and 4 months.
Number 3.
A 2010 World Cup scandal. The first soccer World Cup to take place on African soil came in 2010 and was hosted by South Africa. The soccer-loving nation was thought to be the most well-prepared place in the continent to host the great event and showcase the love of the game to the world. This was however not completed without any scandal taking place, and one of them was when cattle was slaughtered at Soccer City, the main stadium where the finals were to be hosted. Animal rights activists were up in arms against the cultural ceremony for the opening of the stadium. Another scandal was when the Nigerian president placed a 2-year ban on the nation's soccer team due to his poor performance at the tournament. However, the biggest scandal was revealed in a 22-page document to the U.S. Department of Justice.
The $10 million question. Was this historic moment the result of a $10 million bribe?
The 2010 FIFA World Cup will be organized in South Africa.
Earlier this week, US investigators had indicated that a high-ranking South African official had paid money to the disgraced former FIFA vice president, Jack Warner. In another twist, the head of the South African Football Association, Danny Jordan, admitted on Sunday that he had paid $10 million, but denied any wrongdoing.
I haven't paid a bribe or taken a bribe from anybody in my life. We don't know who is mentioned in the indictment.
He insists that the money paid was a gesture of goodwill, a contribution to the CONCACAF, the North Central American and Caribbean Football Confederation, headed by Warner at the time, and raided 4 days ago by US investigators. The payment was made in 2008, 4 years after the World Cup was awarded to South Africa, an argument that Jordan raised in his defense. While the US inquiry centers on bribery allegations linked to the 2010 tournament in South Africa, Swiss investigators are also probing the controversial awarding of the 2018 and 2022 World Cups to Russia and Qatar.
Jack Warner and Chuck Blazer had apparently been the masterminds of an uncovered scheme for a $10 million payoff in exchange for votes for the tournament. Warner's son Darian had been organizing friendly matches against the Confederation of North, Central American and Caribbean Association football nations to be played in South Africa, but he was also allegedly collecting $10 million in cash at a hotel in France from high-ranking South African bid committee officials, and he would then travel to Trinidad and Tobago to hand it to Jack Warner. Jack Warner, the vice president and executive committee member, sold his vote for the 2010 FIFA World Cup, and this scandal has been the main reason for the resignation of the organization's long-term president, Sepp Blatter. South Africa has long denied the allegations, and the Minister of Sports at the time, Fikile dismissed the accusations, and stated the proper processes were indeed followed, and nothing untoward was done. The officials who paid Warner conceded that the $10 million amounts were paid, but denied that it was a bribe, but it was in fact a donation to the Confederation of North, Central American and Caribbean Association Football. Warner was the president of the CONCACAF from 1990 to 2011, and the FBI stated that Warner had used CONCACAF account to launder the cash. Tens of millions of dollars were diverted from the football community illegally through bribes and corruption in FIFA's confirmation.
Now, so much scandals have come out of FIFA, and now the latest development is that FIFA says it wants tens of millions of dollars in damages from all the officials that have been implicated in corruption scandals. What does that mean for South Africa, though?
Not a lot in reality, because what has come out today is that FIFA's lawyers have filed a victim statement with the United States Supreme Court in New York. And that's where the U.S. Justice Department laid all the charges against the 41 individuals and companies over the last sort of 8 months since the scandal actually broke. In all along, FIFA has been regarded as a victim, and it's very important that it stays that way for the U.S. Justice Department, because if FIFA is not a victim, and if it becomes a perpetrator of this of these crimes that they're alleged, then probably the cases against the individuals will collapse, because they will fall then into FIFA as an organization. So the U.S. Justice Department wants FIFA to continue being a victim. FIFA, in its PR game over the past 8 months in trying to recover from the scandal and trying to keep itself as untainted as it possibly can, has also played that game, and they're playing that game now. And this is part of that process. They're not expecting to get any of this money back anytime soon, but it's all part of the public relations game. And at the end of the statement, they actually say that they don't stipulate exactly. There's certain money that they stipulate, the salaries of some of the individuals that they're claiming back, and then they specifically refer to the theft of $10 million. But it's by defendants Jack Warner, Chuck Blazer, and another person who is not named. So South Africa is not named as a defendant in this. The defendants here are the original people that were charged. So in a sense, they're not asking for anything from South Africa, but obviously it will be a big indictment if this is found, if this holds up in court, and if Jack Warner has to pay that $10 million back specifically, it's going to come back to South Africa at some point.
And then looking at the former SAFA CEO scandal, Leslie Sidibe being fingered, and he coming out to the media to say his hands are clean, he was not involved in any match fixing or World Cup fixing for that matter. Is the South African justice system going to get involved, and should they get involved and handle it in a manner that the US justice system is handling all the affairs at FIFA, or is that different?
I think it is slightly different to some extent, because the charges that were laid against Sidibe and also against Steve Goddard and Adil Carlson have a lot to do with non-disclosure, which is not in itself a crime, you know, as far as the South African justice system is concerned. But it is a problem that FIFA have. That story is not gone away yet, though, because Sidibe himself, as well as Steve Goddard, were very upfront yesterday saying, we disclosed this stuff, and there were other people who told us to keep quiet and didn't pass the information on. And Steve Goddard yesterday specifically said, I gave that information to FIFA, and FIFA didn't do anything about it. So I think there's more to come on that story, because they're very much taking the line that they are being the victims, when in actual fact they were the whistleblowers.
VBS Mutual Bank scandal. The VBS scandal became one of the most talked about scandals in recent days after the almost unknown regional bank to being a nationwide institution seemingly overnight. VBS, a black-owned financial institution, was established in 1982 by the then Venda Homeland government, and it was initially called the Venda Building Society. It operated as an investment scheme aiming to encourage communities to invest. In 2016, former President Jacob Zuma secured a loan of over 7 million rands from PS in order to repay the money the Constitutional Court ruled that he had to pay back for upgrading his homestead in Nkandla. The Public Investment Corporation was the majority shareholder of the TIME, and about a quarter of its shares belonged to Diambu Investments. A lot of his clients started claiming that they could not withdraw their life savings, and they claimed that they were told by VBS that there was no money. The bank denied the allegations and stated that it only had minor issues at its branch in Limpopo. However, a few years later it was revealed that the bank had billions of rands siphoned out, and it therefore robbed the poor elderly and hard-working South Africans. The bank was initially reported to have lost over 1.5 billion rands worth of funds, and the wastage was due to monies being given to the Venda King, executives and even top political figures, and money was used to host VIP parties for the African National Congress.
That it is an unfortunate situation that two of the major giant newspapers like City Press and Sunday Times, which the public is supposed to rely on in terms of professionalism, have gone out and write a story without even a sub-minimal standard of doing a due diligence, where they just get a disgruntled former employee, former CEO of Vele, Mr. Manyache, who is under suspension for investigation, and runs to the media and tell them the story. They put it on the front page, and Vele has got its own cash flow. Vele has got its own subsidiaries. Those subsidiaries which Vele owned, they've owned it even before VBS. So Vele has got its own assets, and which VBS is one of them.
What do you make of these allegations that money was taken from the VBS account in February and March, respectively, amounting in millions paid to your account? Can you respond to that?
Well, I showed and shared the proof of payment which was happened. People need to understand that VBS was put into curatorship on the 2nd of March. Now, the money they are referring to was paid, which they said was paid to me, was on the 18th of February and the 19th of February. This was the money which was paid by me, 3 million from my FNB account to VBS, and 15 million from Nedbank to VBS to assist VBS. By that time, VBS was going through some liquidity crisis. And it's only that 18 million only helped the VBS to stay afloat for only 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, it was put under curatorship. And I have given Sunday Times and City Press, they have given them the proof of payment from my personal account, but they go and still write that that money comes from VBS to me. When it's coming from me to VBS, that money is sitting with the curator now. I can't even get hold of it.
What do you think went wrong at VBS?
Well, I think we are waiting. We are all waiting as a main shareholder of VBS, as Vele. We are also waiting patiently to find out what the curator is actually saying. Corporate governance went past. So if there was issue of corporate governance which went under there, and there might be also, if there's any element of fraud, we are waiting for that report. That's why, as Vele, we are supporting the curator, and some of the information the curator is getting and writing is coming from Vele, which we volunteer because we also want to go to the bottom of it, because this is our also assets which have gone past. So we need to go to the bottom of it to find out exactly what happened. And we will share with the public, and that report will be made public to say exactly what happened within VBS.
But how did you as shareholders miss or did not pick it up that there was mismanagement or there was corruption at VBS?
Look, we always answer this question by saying that, there are two different scenarios you need to be aware of, the public must be aware of. A company which is like a bank is different from a normal company. And in my other 9 subsidiaries of Vele, I can walk into the door and ask the CEO to see the CEO and say, I want to see what is happening. With the bank, you can't do that. The bank is regulated in terms of the Banks Act. It's only the Reserve Bank. Whether you are a shareholder or not, you are not even allowed access to the bank. So the executives, they're only accountable to the board, and the board to the Reserve Bank. Now, that's all, whether you are a shareholder or not. So we also do not know, because we are not allowed even to go there into the bank and ask what is happening. Otherwise, that will be the breach. And remember, a bank is highly strictly regulated. You cannot just walk in. Even if you can you put 10 billion rand into VBS tomorrow, and somebody put 10 cents, because you put 10 billion does not give you a right to walk into the bank. They will still tell you you are nothing in the bank. They are not even accountable to us. We are only, as a shareholder, you only get the information through the board and what is published in the financials and the board. You cannot go and fiddle with the bank.
Let's go back to your relationship as Vele Investments with the King.
Yes, as Vele Investment, people need to understand this is owned by vendor people, and therefore the vendor people will always have you will always have a normal relationship with your king, and this is not a business relationship. Now the media wants to make it like as if there is a business relationship between Vele and the king, and there is no. It's just an arm's length normal relationship. We honor him as a king, we respect him as our king, and that's all. It's like any other company. It's not like the king has got shares or is a shareholder or he sits in Vele's board. The king has got nothing to do with Vele. He's based in Venda, Vele is based in Joburg.
But what do you make of the allegations that he receives a monthly salary from your company?
Look, I said again, these allegations are wild, and I cannot even for a second give it a credit where the same people who are making similar allegations, I cannot even report something straight where I make a deposit, they said that it was a payment. So if they can go and irresponsibly and misrepresented the true fact like that, and after I've given them, what about the king? Because the king has never gone out public and officially and say this is what they say. It's an allegation from the newspaper, which I do not believe, because I don't believe what they wrote about me also.
The king in the newspaper is quoted as saying that he is going to take legal action against you specifically and Mr. Matozi.
Again, the king, we have got a very, very good relationship with the king. Myself personally, he's got my number, and the king is not afraid of me. If there's something, he would have called me and summoned me as his subject. He would not even go to the paper. I believe as my king, he will call me and he will deal with me in terms of the normal vendor cultures. But he hasn't done that, which means this is just a wild allegation from the irresponsible journalists.
Mr. Matong, before I let you go, did you and Mr. Chifiwa buy the king gifts?
I am on record to say I have not bought anybody gifts.
The Great Bank Heist, and it described how the executives of the bank, led by the chairman Chifiwa Matotsi, who was identified as the kingpin, stole as much as 1.8 billion rand from the bank over the course of about 18 months. The report also found and described how the bank sourced money from the PIC, as well as a number of municipalities in the Limpopo area that included the likes of the Greater Guyana Municipality, Limpopo Municipality, Madibeng, Mafikeng municipalities, the Vembe Municipality and the West Rand District Municipality. It described the way in which a number of politically connected people would open the doors to the municipalities, and the municipalities would then be induced to make deposits with VBS Mutual Bank, contrary to the rules for a mutual bank and for municipalities. And some of these politically connected people included the likes of Danny Mziza, the provincial treasurer of the ANC in Limpopo, Brian Shivambu, the brother of EFF's deputy president Floyd Shivambu, and the Venda Royal King TP Mpepu Ramabulana. The bank found that the actions of VBS and its executives, as well as the bank's largest shareholder, Vele Investments, was a criminal enterprise and was rotten to the core, and also had a lot to say about the role of the auditors of VBS Mutual Bank, which was KPMG. Two partners, Sipho Malaba and Dumi Shuma, received tens of millions of rands in the form of gratuitous payments from the bank, and the report made a recommendation that certainly Sipho Malaba should be held criminally liable for his role in signing off the 2017 annual financial accounts, and a number of people should be criminally prosecuted. Most of these are the bank's previous executives, as well as entities related to the bank. So the question now hangs over the head of many of the municipalities that deposited money, as much as 1.2 billion rand. Will they get their money back? It might be a long while before that happens.
More than 20,000 customers who had deposited their monies in the bank had their monies repaid by the South African Reserve Bank. The investigation revealed that over 50 individual and companies defrauded the company of over 2 billion rands. Bell and Associates took over 930 million rands, VBS chairman took 325 million rands, the Free State Development Corporation took 100 million, while other including Kabelo Matsib, Saifo Malaba and Poppy Mukatabwang took a little under 40 million rands. Brian Shabambu, the brother of F. Floyd Shabambu, took 16 million, and this has since cast a dark cloud of skepticism over the FU's president had to refute claims in many interviews and press conferences, where he always dares anyone who purports the claims to bring forward any evidence, and so far no evidence has been brought forward.
Number 1.
The Gupta scandal. The Guptas arrived soon after the fall of apartheid with the aim to prosper under the newly elected democratic government. They worked tirelessly to align themselves close to the ruling ANC leadership right after the end of white minority rule, arriving in 1993, a year before the democratic elections, and just 3 years after the unbanning of many political parties associated with liberation movements. The rise of the black elite welcomed men like the Guptas, who could infuse cash into a country starved by anti-apartheid sanctions. Back in India, the Guptas were small-time businessmen with high ambitions. Soon after arriving, the Guptas started slapping together grey market computers from undervalued imported parts and selling them under the logo Sahara. The name was a tribute to their hometown of Saharanpur in Africa's Sahara Desert. As their profit soared, the Guptas were welcomed into South Africa's inner circle of business and political elites. Atal befriended Asa Pahit, a South African Indian politician and ANC stalwart. Pahit, an India enthusiast, arranged for Ajay to be appointed to an advisory committee to President Thabo Mbeki. They became famous in Johannesburg for inviting politicians to parties at their large compound in Saxonwold and entertaining the Indian and South African cricket teams after matches. They also began to sponsor cricket stadiums, and their investments paid off. They befriended Jacob Zuma. By the time the Guptas had met him, in 2002, Zuma was deputy president of South Africa. A conservative traditionalist, Zuma is married to 5 wives and has 23 children. Jacob Zuma lived beyond his means and couldn't keep up with own taxes. Strapped for cash, he received interest-free loans from his personal financial advisor Shabar Sheikh, a South African Indian businessman, who engineered an annual bribe for Zuma from a French arms company, Thales, from the arms deal scandal. In 2005, Sheikh was found guilty of having a corrupt relationship with Zuma and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The Guptas, who were canny investors, had begun playing the long game from the moment they met Zuma. They put his son Dujazarni on their payroll in 2003 and continued to promote him even after Zuma's fall. The youngest Gupta brother, Rajesh, nicknamed Tony, was especially close to Dujazarni. Dujazarni was eventually made a director of several Gupta-linked companies. The brothers helped set him up in a 190 million rand apartment in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the world's tallest skyscraper, and paid for his 5-star vacations. In 2014, when Dujazarni crashed his Porsche into a minibus, killing 2 passengers, the first person he called was Rajesh. The Guptas insisted that Dujazarni was employed on his own merits. Ajay even said this young boy works 16 to 18 hours daily, and he personally goes to all the mines, and doesn't sit in an air-conditioned room, and just count the money. But Dujazarni also enabled the Guptas to present their companies as black-owned businesses, a display essential for winning government contracts in post-apartheid South Africa. The Guptas started paying off greedy officials, distorting government policy for personal gain. In April 2010, the state-owned Industrial Development Corporation lent the Guptas 500 million rands, which they used to buy a uranium mine. It seemed like a risky move. At the time, worldwide uranium prices were plummeting. But the Guptas appeared to have inside knowledge that Zuma was planning, over the objections of his own treasury, to sign an expensive deal with Russia to open a series of nuclear power plants. Once the facilities were up and running, they would then source all uranium from the Guptas, who wound up pocketing all but 267 million rands of the government loan. The Guptas launched a newspaper called The New Age. Zuma promptly called the head of the government's communications arm, Themba Maseko, and instructed him to set up New Age as the only newspaper for government offices. When Maseko paid a visit to the family's compound, Ajay ordered him to turn over the government's entire advertising budget, some $80 million a year, to the New Age. If he didn't cooperate, Maseko later testified, Ajay said he would speak to my seniors in government, meaning Zuma, who would sort me out and replace me with people who would cooperate with him if he failed to do so. 6 months later, Maseko was removed from office, and the government handed its advertising money over to the Guptas. Though the New Age gained no real audience, every government department appeared to subscribe to it, with thousands of copies lying around in offices, unread. According to court documents, the newspaper was later used to launder money through fake advertising invoices. An ANC member of parliament named Vijty Mentor was invited to meet with Zuma. She later testified that she was picked up at the airport in Johannesburg by a tall and Tony. With their dark suits, earpieces, and sunglasses, she assumed they were the president's drivers. Mentor soon found herself at the Gupta compound, sitting across from Ajay, who offered to make her Minister of Public Enterprises, provided that, in her new position, she should help a Gupta-linked airline win a coveted route to India. When Mentor refused, President Zuma emerged from the next room. Carrying her bag, he escorted her to a waiting cab. "Go well, young woman," he told her in Zulu. "Everything will be okay." A few days later, the Minister of Public Enterprises was fired after she refused to meet with officials from the airline. The Gupta's brazenness was becoming obvious in government circles. In 2011, to shield the brothers from investigation, Zuma fired the chiefs of all 3 intelligence agencies and replaced them with loyalists. The following year, leak emails show the Gupta shell company acquired the rights to run a government-funded dairy farm meant to empower poor black farmers. The director of the Gupta company was a former IT salesman with no experience in farming. The contract was won without a bidding process. According to court documents, the Guptas siphoned $16 million from the operation. The dairy fell into disuse, with some 100 cows reportedly dying from lack of proper
Meet the Guptas. Weddings in this family are a lavish affair, celebrating their roots in South Africa, which only date back to 1993. The Gupta brothers come from great wealth in India. They've also flourished locally, buying property and grabbing business deals. They consider some of South Africa's most prominent politicians as their closest friends. Seated in the front row at this week's wedding are, among others, Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies and Public Enterprises Minister Malusi Gigaba. The family has defended its close ties with President Jacob Zuma, saying they've entertained many other top political leaders, such as former President Thabo Mbeki and Helen Zille. And they claim that the decision to go into business with Zuma's son Duduzane, even put him on the board of several Gupta-owned companies, was based entirely on merit. It's also reportedly within this Gupta family compound that ministers are told when they've won favor with Zuma. The Guptas claim their money does not come from government tenders, even though state advertising is seemingly pumped into their newspaper, The New Age.
Because if you talk about corruption, we have declared war against corruption as a party. We have established through government a number of structures and mechanisms to deal with corruption, and everybody knows. People have been arrested, resources have been recovered from some other people. We believe we are dealing with the question of corruption all the time. Regarding the family we are talking about, there are allegations. There are indeed allegations. I'm not sure whether the allegations are saying they are corrupt. I don't think so. I think what people are talking about is they are, as somebody talked, they talk to people and they say whatever they say. Like all business people say a number of things to people in government, but with them there's a particular focus that which has been given to them, which led to besides anything, the leadership of the ruling party discussing the matter. It was discussing the matter the last weekend. And it had met the family before that meeting. And it was also discussed the matter and took the decision to meet them again. And therefore the matter is being attended to. And I'm sure at a given time, they will also be in a position to put across their own explanations to whatever has been done. And I'm sure we'll know what is the final kind of conclusion of those kind of issues.
So you as president don't feel any need at all to distance yourself from the family?
No, that family has been closer to many people in the country. I don't think it has ever caused a problem. Of course, other people have got their views about it. It's not a matter of individuals taking a decision. I don't think you can just take decisions because there are allegations. The matter, as I say, is being discussed, is being handled in whatever way. They have been engaged. They will continue to be engaged, and I'm sure there'll be conclusions about the perceptions of people that they have about the family.
They then went to use the diplomatic channel with the support of an individual in the Indian High Commission who redesignated the wedding entourage as an official delegation to enable them to use the Air Force Base watercloak under the cover of diplomatic privilege.
The Chief of State Protocol, Bruce Kolwani, had also acted without proper documentation from the Indian High Commission. Thus, diplomatic protocols were compromised. Kolwani has been placed on compulsory leave. However, investigators found that neither the President nor any minister gave the green light for the plane's landing.
In any event, the President is not involved in authorizing the landing or not landing of aircrafts at airports. It results squarely under the Department of Defense, especially the Air Force Command there.
The DGs also recommended that name dropping by public service officials should be escalated to a gross misconduct offense. President Zuma's name and those of several ministers had been used to secure the landing. The DA and the ACDP rejected the report, calling for an independent investigation.
It's clear that the executive authority, who are ultimately responsible, were exonerated by the minister before the investigation even began. That is why we need an independent investigation conducted by the public protector into Guptagate.
The report will be released sometime this week. Minister Khadebe also clarified that Waterkloof is not a national key point but a strategic military base. Lehana Tsotiti, SABC News, Pretoria.
Before Jacob Zuma announced his resignation, police conducted a raid on the Johannesburg residence of the Gupta family at the heart of Zuma's fall from grace. Joining me now to tell us about the Guptas is Leela Jacinta, who wrote a piece about them on our website, France24.com. So, Leela, who are the Guptas?
Well, they're three brothers, Ajay, Atul and Rajesh, who's also called Tony. They were born and grew up in northern India in this tiny town, city of Saharanpur. Their father was a very small-time trader. He traded in spices and soap. Stone powders, and in the early 90s he dispatched his three sons to go out into the world and make money. So one brother went to Russia, another brother went to China, and the middle son, Atul, landed in South Africa in the early 90s, just after the fall of apartheid. The economy was opening up, sanctions were lifted, and Atul found a business climate with none of the red tape and the bureaucracy of his native India. And he started off very small with a computer assembling firm. But as he started growing and diversifying, his two brothers joined him. By the time the two brothers joined him in Johannesburg, Atul was already starting to get introduced to various members of the ruling ANC party. He was introduced to former President Thabo Mbeki, and the family just seemed to be hedging their bets. They were just trying to have political cover for their work, nothing untoward. But it was with Jacob Zuma that the family hit upon a really mutually enriching relationship, and the two families, the Guptas and the Zumas, they started to get so entwined in their business interests that the South Africans actually took to calling them the Zuptas, the Zumas and the Guptas. And in the course since the 1990s, the Guptas have hired various members of the Zuma family. Two of Zuma's children were hired in Gupta companies. One of his wives, Zuma has many wives because polygamy is allowed in South Africa, was hired by Gupta companies. So as they started getting richer, so did the Zumas.
For more content like this, please like and subscribe to our channel in South Africa. Thanks for watching this video.